You may be forgiven for thinking this is going to be some kind of vigilante movie a la The Punisher, and you're right to a certain degree, but it also has a little bit of a change of pace as well. So we are talking about The Demolisher, which is a 2015 action film with a kind of like a dramatic horror twist to it as well. It's directed by Gabriel Kara, who also wrote it and actually stars Barrett. Now, you actually have two concurrent storylines when we kind of first start off with this film. They'll kind of merge together just after the halfway mark, I suppose. The main storyline focuses on this couple where the woman was a police officer, and she was crippled in the line of duty when she's trying to take down this satanic cult type situation where they're trying to sacrifice a baby. And that's your kind of horror element here, although it is really not mentioned again. But her husband seems to kind of like go off the deep end and becomes kind of like a vigilante, basically dressed up in kind of armour and riot gear and going out and killing all of the kind of the gang members that he can get his hands on, basically. And then we have this woman who just seems to be pretty much living her life, and we're not really sure why we're spending so much time with her. But as it turns out, these kind of these paths will meet, and the guy who is the kind of the vigilante ends up becoming like a sort of slasher, basically. So I'll kind of go into it a little bit more detail as I go through the review. Then it might be a little bit spoilery because I'm going to have to talk about some things in this movie that I won't tell you the end, obviously, but some of the things that progress in this movie. Suffice to say, looking at the kind of reviews for this film, it does seem to be quite divisive. Certainly it's got some positive reviews from sort of critics, but fan reviews seem to be quite poor. So where do I stand on it? Well, let's talk about some of the positives first of all. I actually think it's quite well shot. There's some fantastic cinematography here. Some very sort of beautiful shots here. So very nice work on the cameras here. I also think the soundtrack is fantastic. Really kind of gets you going in these kind of action scenes. So you kind of use a bassy soundtrack, and I really like it. I thought it was very kind of intense. Kind of reminded me of the kind of the 70s and 80s kind of revenge flicks, and this is obviously definitely a homage to those type of films. I also thought here that the actual premise in a way was somewhat interesting, but it was kind of handled in a little bit not so well, which I'll come on to. But the kind of the shifting your expectations about where this movie was kind of going, and maybe looking at it from both sides, I thought was kind of quite fun. And obviously, well, it's basically a look at the kind of a guy who's having like a mental breakdown, basically, and how it affects it. If we go on to the kind of the negatives first of all, there's barely any dialogue in this film. There is dialogue in it, but it's sparse. So it does get a little boring because you're just watching images on screen, really, and it kind of, without people kind of exchanging conversation, it kind of gets a little boring in place, I have to say. After that, it definitely has somewhat of a bit of an art house feel to it. So there's a lot of extended shots focusing on kind of like people just, you know, chilling out or doing whatever, basically. It's like, come on, yeah, it's an arty shot. Let's just kind of let's move this along a little bit. And I felt in some places it was trying to be arty for arty's sake. The main guy, who is the vigilante, is, I have to say, somewhat overacts. I know he's meant to be kind of losing his marbles and all of that, but he's like, this is my intense face, and I don't know, it was just kind of like, he's somewhat overacting there, and he was like, it just kind of took you out of it, because this is high art basically, but this guy was way overacting. And also, I have to be honest with you, I didn't really understand some of the things that were happening here. So this is where it's going to get mildly spoilery. So the kind of this cult that we see that this woman who was the wife was basically affected by seems to just disappear, and we instead of chasing these guys who have this kind of like baboon motif on their back, and I'm guessing they're the same people, but we're never really explicitly told that. And also, it's like, why were they murdering babies? They seem to be just plain crooks. Who knows? Also, the biggest thing for me is, why the hell is this guy pursuing the other female lead? That we basically see clips of this kind of girl just living her life, basically, and she kind of briefly crosses paths with the kind of the couple, and for no real reason that I can see, this guy sort of takes an interest in her and is basically hunting her down. And this is where he sort of becomes a slasher, because then he becomes the antagonist, because you're rooting for obviously for the woman. to try and sort of get away, and he's acting like a slasher and basically killing anyone who's in his path to get to this woman. And the only thing I can see was like this. They go to the cinema once, and the couple with the vigilante and the policewoman, she leaves like a necklace behind. This woman picks it up, and that's the reason. And I don't even know how this bloke saw that, because he clearly left the necklace in the cinema, and how would he identify it from like quite a distance? I know, it just seemed a little bit stupid to me. And the other thing is, this guy seems to have teleporting powers in classic slasher fashion. Basically, you have people running away at high speed, yet this guy's walking along and always seems to kind of catch up with the person who's running away. I just like, it doesn't, you know, those tropes don't work if you're trying to make it some kind of like high art film, I don't think. So, and I guess one other thing as well, sometimes the lack of dialogue, like I've mentioned before, even goes so far to say with like the action scenes, there doesn't seem to be a lot of like oohs and ahs when people are fighting. They're fighting almost in silence, and you don't have that kind of like the screams of pains or kind of people catching their breath, things like that. So it's just kind of weird. So this film definitely has some problems, but I did find it, despite all of that, I did find it somewhat compelling and watchable. But it is deeply flawed, I would say. So this film, I'm going to give it a let's say a 4.5 out of 10. It's definitely flawed, but I still kind of found it watchable. If you like your kind of Punisher, vigilante flicks like Boy Wonder, things like that, then you may want to watch this film. But like I said, I did find it a little confusing at times. Anyway, that's my review. What did you think of it? Leave a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.